So you want to wear a gray lip, but you want it to feel wearable, a little bit more approachable. Then this is the deep dive for you. I recently watched a video by SILKY MOCHI where she was diving into the dark SIREN aesthetic, and she was basically explaining some elements of the dark SIREN. It's like these very cool tones, watery, pearlescent elements, and she recommended like a grayed out lip. So I tried that for a look recently, and I was just really kind of enamored with how the gray lip has a certain impact to it. It's like softly gothic, yet kind of light and ethereal. So I wanted to do a deep dive on this type of lip, how I created this makeup look around this lip, basically offering some tips and tricks for wearing a gray toned lip to make it feel potentially a little bit more wearable and approachable. I definitely recommend checking out that video by SILKY MOCHI. I'll link it down below, and yeah, let's get into it. For a wearable gray lip effect, I want to start with the lip. There's a couple reasons for this. One, whenever I find like I want the lip to be the focus of a look, whether it's a bold lip or a unique lip, I just find starting with it just acts as that anchor through which I can build the rest of the look. And many of you have seen me do this a lot of times, but I find this is particularly important with those kind of unusual lips. There's a couple ways you can really play with gray pigment on the lips, one of which is like blanking out your lip with concealer, so you really have this base that's totally blanked out, and then the gray shade can really show. This is going to lean you in a little bit more of a gothic direction. But I want this to feel a little bit more kind of approachable, wearable, ethereal, so I'm going to keep my natural pigment there. I did try this out earlier with just the concealer base, and it just felt a bit too much for me. So to keep that kind of approachability, I'm going to leave my natural pigment showing, that little bit of pink still being on the lips. So I'm going to start with a lip liner. When it comes to cool tone lip liners, you can also find what works for you on the spectrum. If you're very cool tone, you may find like a very ashy, cool gray is really easy for you to wear. But if you're more neutral, potentially leaning warm like me, then you might want to opt for something a little bit more taupey. In general, Makeup Forever Endless Cacao is like my go-to cool tone lip. It just leans a little bit more taupe rather than cool gray. And this is like a really great stepping point into cool tone liners. But today I'm going to play with something even cooler because I want this to still be softly gothic, softly vampy. And this is from Unearthly. It's the shade Cursed. I'm borrowing this from my mother actually. And you can just see that slight difference of how it's a little bit cooler. So I'm going to start with this shade today. And I'm going to just use the side of the pencil and like feather it in to the center of the lip. Depending on how impactful you want to be with this, you can go heavy-handed or you can keep it light. Like this is a first pass of the gray lip shade, and it's not too overwhelming. And it's almost like the pink on my lips just automatically leans that a little bit more taupey, not so cool tone. So now I'm just going to build it up a little bit more so the edges have a little bit more pigment. And leaving it there for now. I think that looks just really interesting. So at this point, I'm going to use a little bit of Rituel de Fille Black Locust at the center of the lip. And this is a cool tone, grayish lip shade, but it has a sheerness in the formula, so it doesn't go on super matte, covering up everything. You can build it up, you can do it softly, but it'll give you that slightly grayed out look. It's like it almost turned a slight purpley gray. Not unlike my shirt and the sheer elements happening with the skin tone showing through. Now I'm going to add a gloss to the lip. I'm going to use this lip glaze from Kaleidos. This is such a cool shade. It's called Free Fall, and it's like a glittery gray gloss. You can see it in the bottle there a little bit. Yeah, really cool shade, really fun shade to top onto things. But this is going to just add that kind of lift to the gray so that it doesn't feel like maybe it's like flattening in any way. It just brings it forward. I find with gloss, that's like why I use it, mostly just to like lift a lip. And it has just like these little particles of sparkle in it. So cool. So as you can see that little bit of pink showing through, and I find that's what keeps it feeling a little bit more approachable. So now I'm going to build the rest of the look around this lip, keeping it in mind and just kind of leaning into this same feeling of this like cool, almost watery, ethereal look. I'm going to start with contour. I've been really into contour instead of bronzer lately, just leaning into the cool tones. It's just been a vibe. Anyway, this is the Sephora contour in shade 1. And I like to go onto this brush. It gets really good focus. And I'm gonna start here. As you can see, it's quite gray. I had people on TikTok being like, that is not a contour shade. How is this not a contour shade? I don't know, maybe it was my lighting, but come on. It's literally a contour stick. I'm creating this line here and just really creating the effect of the cheekbone going in a little bit. I always like to do a little bit here. With bronzer or contour, if you've got these two lines going here, you can kind of connect them right at the hairline. Now let's get into the blush. So often when I want to lift my features, same with gloss, like doing that effect, I will opt for a little bit more of like a cool or a berry tone because it like kind of pops on the cheek. So I want to get a little bit of that lift, but grayed out because I still want to be like working within these like mysterious cool tones, right? So I'm gonna do some mixing. I have this cream blush from Milk. It's the shade Quickie. I'm just gonna mix it on the back of my hand. Like this on its own is just like too much, too vibrant compared to what's going on with the rest of the complexion. So I'm gonna take that contour shade, gonna put it there beside it, and start to mix the two and make this custom shade that has a little bit of lift and pigment to it, but it's like grayed out. And then I'm going to take my blush brush, take that mix off the back of my hand, and start applying it. You could potentially mix right on the cheek too if you wanted, but I find you have a lot more control if you just take that extra step. This can be a fun thing to do with any blush shade if you want to like take away some of the vibrancy, just mix in a bit of contour. So this kind of created like a grayed out purpley look, and I think it looks really interesting, really unique. Now, at this point, I'm going to put a bit of highlighter on. I feel like an icy type of shade is going to work with this. Keeping within the cool tones, I have from Rituel de Fille, this is Ice Bow. It's the Rare Light Cream Luminizer. I'm just going to go in with my finger, warm up the product. And I always forget to say I do have a discount code with Rituel de Fille, which is Evangeline Molly for 10% off. If you're ever interested, gets you 10%. So looking at the top of my cheekbone, I'm just going to put a little bit of that there. I think this has a little bit of purple in it too, a little bit of pink reflect. Before I move on to the eyes, just a bit of quick powdering. But I definitely want to keep this like dewy, glossy feeling right there. Feels like it goes with the theme. Now, this is once again the point where you can bear in mind your skin tone. If you're super cool and say you've gone with like a much ashier gray, you can do that with the eyes. I mean, you can do whatever you want, but if you want, again, that more approachable feeling. So for example, I find this a pretty cool gray from the Unearthly Dreamer palette. I find these kinds of grays personally, once they're on my eyes, just feel a little bit flat. And as much as I love that kind of cool look, sometimes I just want things to feel still a little more harmonious. So compare it to something like from the Huda Rose Quartz palette, like this shade. This has like a little bit more pink in it, but it's like a grayed out pink, or this shade here, Precious. Like that is definitely up my alley. Like as you can see, the difference between these two, this has that taupey feeling that I'm gonna find a little bit more wearable. Although as with all things, it's totally up to your taste and what works for you. But what I'm gonna do is start with that shade from the Huda palette. And I'm just gonna build that out, the outer corner, and see how it's looking. It like inherently has like that touch of purpley pink, which kind of makes sense because it's in the Rose Quartz palette. So I'm just building the pigment right here. Bring it up on the lower lash line as well. And then I'm gonna take a fluffy brush that has nothing on it and use that to blend this out. I'm gonna add a touch more depth with this shade here, but I like the idea of keeping the eyes kind of on this medium contrast level. It's not too dark or too light. Everything's kind of balanced. So I'm just gonna put a little bit of that on the outer corner for just a touch of smokiness. Just like right there. Maybe a little bit there. Just a little. And that's it. A little bit of shimmer. I'm looking at this one here, Energized. Kind of reminds me of the lip shade. It's been a while since I used this palette. I went through a phase where I was obsessed with it, and then I put it to the side, and I think I gotta bust it out more. Pretty, wow. And these days, I just love that little bit of placement of shimmer rather than bringing it all over the lid, all up here. Especially if the shimmer is super, or like has pigment to it and isn't just like kind of ethereal sparkle. I'm gonna put a touch of that on the lower lash line too. Now I'm gonna take this pure cool white here and put that in the inner corner. This is once again an opportunity to add that little bit of lift to the look because it's brightening. I'm gonna pop off camera to do my lashes, and I may put a bit of cool tone in the waterline. In all my years of having endless cacao, as you can see, it's quite small. I've never put it on the eyes. I'll sharpen it for sure for like eye safety. Hopefully that's enough. And yeah, let's see how that looks. And I will be one moment. Here is the final look with the lashes done. I did pop this into the waterline and I found it did a similar effect as the lip where you have like a red waterline, right? So it kind of just like pokes through just a little bit, but like adds that touch of grayed out element to the eye. So it's like softly gray and smoky. Very cool. And yeah, this look for me feels like very approachable, very wearable, but it just has that nod to the softly gothic, slightly siren, ethereal feeling. Very cool, yet wearable for me as someone who's neutral, a touch warm potentially. I just find when you're mindful of what level of cool tone works for you, that's how you can make it work and make it feel like it's going to feel wearable for you. But of course, if you like to go super contrasty, super like against your undertone, that is its own type of really beautiful look, really striking. But yeah, definitely consider like playing with different tones of gray if you're interested in like a lip like this or a look like this. Just like find what your kind of barometer of gray and cool tone is basically. Because yeah, there's something really unique about like a lip like this in particular. It's just slightly strange in the best way. As always, here's Toasty for the outro. Thank you guys all for watching until the end. I hope you enjoyed this little deep dive into a cool tone lip. And until next time, may you all find yourselves a little bit of makeup magic, and we will see you in the next video. Bye, witches.